These Americans would advise them.
The protesters are just outside a military base. They're throwing rocks. Any understanding between Israel and Gaza could quickly fall apart again.
You witness persistence, and that's where change happens.
The one thing they have in common is a determination to keep going.
I'm Ben Wiedemann in Ukraine, and this is CNN.
Next door in a place I like to call the Situation Room. See you at 8.
Happening now, Republican state officials testify under oath about the threats they faced and the pressure they felt as then-President Trump pushed them to overturn Biden's legitimate wins in Georgia and Arizona. We're breaking down all the key evidence from today's January 6th hearing. And that includes a new revelation that Rudy Giuliani admitted the Trump team did not have evidence to back up claims of voter fraud. Select committee members arguing that Trump himself knew it was all bogus and dangerous, but kept the scheme going anyway. A former Georgia election official telling the panel that she and her family paid a horrible price for Trump's lies. Their lives threatened after the president falsely accused her of ballot fraud. We want to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room. Tonight, the American people have gotten a deeper look into Donald Trump's attack on democracy through the testimony of state-level officials who defied him and wound up actually fearing for their own lives. Let's get right to all of the new testimony in the January 6th investigation. Our chief congressional correspondent, Manu Raju, reports.
You're a tyrant, you're a felon, and you must turn yourself in to the authorities immediately.
Tonight, the January 6th committee laying out in stark terms the intimidation and pressure campaign from then-President Donald Trump and his allies against state officials who were attempting to uphold democracy in states where Joe Biden won.
What are we going to do? What can you and I do to a state legislator besides kill him?
Trump urging them to reverse the election results, even though he was told repeatedly it was illegal.
And I said something to the effect of, sir, we've done dozens of investigations, hundreds of interviews. The major allegations are not supported by the evidence developed.
Rusty Bowers, the Republican Arizona State House Speaker, testified that Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Congressman Andy Biggs, and others pressured him to decertify Biden's win in his state. Biggs ignored CNN's questions about it. Bowers said Giuliani never provided evidence of their conspiracy theories, even admitting there was none.
What exactly did he say and how that come up?
My recollection, he said, we've got lots of theories, we just don't have the evidence. And I don't know if that was a gaffe or maybe he didn't think through what he said, and afterwards we kind of laughed about it. But I do not take this current situation in a light manner, a fearful manner, or a vengeful manner. I do not want to be a winner by cheating.
Trump's lawyer, John Eastman, allegedly told Bowers to just replace the electors, even if he did not have the authority.
And he said, just do it and let the court sort it out. And I said, you're asking me to do something that's never been done in history, the history of the United States, and I'm going to put my state through that without sufficient proof?
But Trump pressed on, and the committee revealing his involvement in the Trump campaign effort to send a fake set of electors on January 6th to prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden's victory.
What did the president say when he called you?
Essentially, he turned the call over to Mr. Eastman, who then proceeded to talk about the importance of the RNC helping the campaign gather these contingent electors in case any of the legal challenges that were ongoing changed the result of any of the states.
Newly revealed text messages from the morning of January 6th show the apparent involvement of GOP Senator Ron Johnson. An exchange between staffers for Johnson and Vice President Pence shows Johnson wanted to give Pence an alternate slate of electors for Michigan and Wisconsin. Pence's staffer responded, "Do not give that to him." Johnson's office contended on Tuesday the senator was unaware of the effort. The pressure campaign extended to Georgia, where Trump's chief of staff texted or called Brad Raffensperger 18 times to set up a phone call where he pressed the GOP election official to find the votes needed to overturn the election.
Why wouldn't you want to find the right answer, Brad, instead of keep saying that the numbers are right? The real truth is I won by 400,000 votes, at least.
Every single allegation we checked, we ran down the rabbit trail to make sure that our numbers were accurate.
Raffensperger described the threats against him and his family after he disputed Trump's fraud claims.
Eventually, my wife started getting the text, and hers typically came in as sexualized texts, which were disgusting. Some people broke into my daughter-in-law's home, and my son has passed, and she's a widow and has 2 kids, and so we're very concerned about her safety also.
Former Georgia election official Wandra Shea Moss testifying about the threats she, her mother, and her son received because of Donald Trump's persistent lies.
Like, be glad it's 2020 and not 1920. I just felt like it was my fault for putting my family in this situation.
Her mother saying her life was in danger.
The FBI informed me that I needed to leave my home for safety. I felt homeless. I felt, I can't believe this person has caused this much damage to me and my family.
Now, I just caught up with Senator Ron Johnson. He's the Wisconsin Republican who was revealed today that one of his aides on the morning of January 6th reached out to Vice President Mike Pence's office and said that the senator wanted to deliver those alternate electors, those fake electors from Michigan and Wisconsin to the vice president on January 6th. Pence's aide said that do not deliver that to the vice president's office. Now, Johnson just revealed that he was aware that something had come to his office on January 6th. He told me, I was aware that we got this package and that somebody wanted us to deliver it, so we reached out to Vice President Mike Pence's office. And I asked him who was the person who provided these fake electors. He said, quote, I have no idea. He went on to downplay the whole matter, calling it a non-story, but acknowledging that he did know this occurred on that morning on January 6th.
Yeah, very disturbing indeed. Manu Raju on Capitol Hill, thank you very much. There's certainly a lot to discuss with our correspondents and our analysts who are here with me in the Situation Room. Jamie Gangel, most of the witnesses we actually heard from today are themselves Republicans who made it clear they voted for Trump. They wanted him to get reelected, but they just didn't see any evidence, any serious evidence at all of voter fraud, did they?
Today's testimony was devastating for Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman. Over and over and over again, these Republican state officials said there was no there.
And they told that to then President Trump.
They were asked about dead voters, 4, not 5,000 or 10,000 underage. What was interesting was they kept asking the campaign for evidence and the lawyers for evidence, and they never came up with it. John Eastman at one point says to Rusty Bowers, just do it and have the courts sort it out. As Gabriel Sterling from Georgia said, there were no secret suitcases with magical ballots in it. It just did not exist.
Yeah, certainly. And Bowers at one point testified that Rudy Giuliani, who was then Trump's personal lawyer, told him, and I'm quoting now, we've got lots of theories, we just don't have the evidence. Caitlin, does that tell you everything you need to know about what happened?
Basically, and you saw this testimony today show just how persistent these officials were, though, in pushing this on these state officials, on these state Republicans like Rusty Bowers, who was testifying today, where he was saying he was getting calls from Rudy Giuliani, who was saying, I don't have the evidence, but here's the claims that we're making, and this is what we want you to push. And you saw former President Trump calling Rusty Bowers and asking him to hold hearings in the Arizona State Capitol because he's the Arizona State House Speaker. You saw that Andy Biggs, the congressman and a Trump ally, called him on January 6th to ask him to help decertify these votes. And I think that's what stuck out today is just how persistent the effort was by these Trump allies to try to get these Republican officials basically to do their bidding simply because they're Republicans and they thought they would go along with it because they also did not want to see a Democrat, Joe Biden, in office. Even though they voted for Trump, they were saying, we could not cross this line. It was illegal. You were asking them to break the law.
Yeah, and they clearly did not want to do that. Laura, these election workers, the women we heard from today, and it was very emotional and powerful testimony. They They clearly faced intense threats to their own lives and their family when we heard it. I want to just have our viewers listen to Ruby Freeman, who was harassed along with her mother and her daughter, and just for doing her own job. Listen to this.
There is nowhere I feel safe. Nowhere. Do you know how it feels to have the President of the United States to target you? The President of the United States is supposed to represent every American, not to target one, but he targeted me, Lady Ruby, a small business owner, a mother, a proud American citizen who stand up to help Fulton County run an election in the middle of the pandemic.
What did you make of this deeply personal, deeply disturbing testimony?
It was so upsetting. I mean, what did she do wrong besides do what we as a democracy need people to do, which is to help run elections? I was at the Justice Department in the voting rights section. Let me tell you, when we interface with the community, it's with people who are volunteering. They're not paid all this money to participate. They could choose to not do any of this, and they do it out of a civic duty. The compulsion to participate, knowing that democracy is not a spectator sport. And so instances like this has a chilling effect now. What do you do to people and say to people who you say, hey, just come and help to volunteer, help to run elections, even be paid even a nominal fee? Well, guess what happens? Why should they bother? Why should they bother? It incentivizes people who have nefarious intent to be installed in these positions to be able to put their thumb on the scale. And it's devastating. The racial implications, talking about how they were passing around USB ports like they were heroin or cocaine when they're passing around mints to each other. The racial overtones in the state of Georgia are quite clear.
Yeah, it was so emotional, so powerful indeed. And these witnesses, Casey, their lives have been changed forever as a result of the lies that were directed at them.
That's absolutely right. And I think, Laura's point is absolutely critical. I mean, these are not people who have decided to be in the arena, right? I mean, Brad Raffensperger, okay, he ran for the office that he now holds. However, his family didn't. His daughter-in-law certainly did not. And I think sometimes, it can be easy to write off what then the former president was doing when he, writes what was described as, a tweet that people think is crazy. For these people, it literally affected their day-to-day actual lives. And, if I have to say big picture, the one thing that really struck me as I was watching these people today, both the election workers, but also the officials who were in charge of making these decisions, is that what I was hearing during the period of time that this was all unfolding from Republicans across the board was that we just needed to let Donald Trump, get his feelings out, right? He had to be allowed to have that, right, outburst, and that it would all be okay in the end. And I think one of the things that we've learned, and it was on particularly stark display today, was that this was a concerted, thought-through, strategic campaign, and the January 6th committee is illustrating that for us.
It's so heartbreaking to hear these witnesses testify how their lives were actually threatened by what he was suggesting. All right, everybody stand by. We have a lot more just ahead. The Select Committee wants to hear more testimony. We're going to talk about future hearings with a key member of the Select Committee, Congressman Jamie Raskin. He's standing by live. We'll be right back.
We share this place, we all belong.
On Mission Ahead, a new spin on launching spacecraft into orbit.
As a species, I think we just always look up and we say, well, that's the next frontier.
Then, could this new zero-emission boat be the Tesla of the sea? Plus, preparing for the future, are cities that float the answer?
On water, buildings don't have to be static.
Meet the entrepreneurs and inventors who are taking mobility to the next level.
Mission Ahead, Saturday on CNN, in association with Fujifilm.
What are the leading companies going to be talking about in the next 2 to 3 years from a talent perspective? It will be about skills. It will be about the use of AI to help their people develop their skills and to transform organizations. We know that skills are becoming obsolete very fast because of the change in digital and the use of technology. And it also enables you to open up the talent pipeline. So for example, in the US, we will hire 20% of our entry-level hiring this year will be into our apprenticeship program. Our apprenticeship program does not focus on 4-year degrees. It focuses on skills and potential. We also have a database of all of the skills of our client-facing people, and we can use algorithms to identify who can be upskilled into new hot areas.
What in the world is going on in Texas right now?
A ruby red state gets redder.
Money is what's pushing Texas to the far right.
Why?
Is this about being conservative or is it about control?
CNN investigates deep in the pockets of Texas. Saturday on CNN.
Republican state officials testified during today's January 6th Select Committee hearing about how they defied increasing pressure and intimidation from then President Trump and his team to back their election lies. Listen to this.
I do not want to be a winner by cheating. I will not play with laws I swore allegiance to.
Our job, from our point of view, is to get the facts out, do our job, tell the truth, follow the Constitution, follow the law, and defend the institutions, and the institutions held.
You know, we just followed the law and we followed the Constitution. And at the end of the day, President Trump came up short. But I had to be faithful to the Constitution. And that's what I swore an oath to do.
All right, let's discuss with a key member of the Select Committee, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Why was it so important for your committee today to highlight the personal impact all this had on election officials?
Well, it's one thing for everybody to hear that Donald Trump tried to steal the election and nullify Biden's majority. It's another thing entirely to see him bullying up close the Republican Speaker of the Arizona House, the Republican Secretary of State of Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, and then actual election officials like Shay Moss, who testified today. I mean, this had a traumatic impact on a lot of people's lives. And of course, in the wake of all of Donald Trump's bullying and coercion, comes a lot of death threats and violence and so on. And so we're beginning to tell the story as you see the violence unfolding towards January the 6th.
Yeah, it was so painful to hear all those details. Your committee did lay out how Republican Senator Ron Johnson actually tried to deliver a fake slate of electors to then Vice President Pence on the morning of January 6th. Does your committee need to hear directly from Senator Johnson?
Well, Senator Johnson has an open invitation, like everybody else who may be a material witness to parts of these events, to come forward and to tell us what he knows. Certainly, if he knows anything more than that, we would love to hear from him. We understand that the organized hit on the election implied the collection of these counterfeit electors, and it's, it would be comic if it weren't so tragic to see people stepping forward and claiming to be electors for a majority when obviously their candidate lost.
The vice chair of the Select Committee, Liz Cheney, says the American people deserve to hear from former White House counsel Pat Cipollone. What specifically do you want him to shed light on, and how aggressively is the committee pursuing his testimony?
Well, his name has been invoked frequently as someone who repeatedly warned Donald Trump that there was no factual merit to his big lie, that there was no legal theory that could justify all of this coercive pressure being placed on Vice President Pence, and there was no pathway to power for him. And so we would like to hear him describe everything that he went through. So far, we're getting it kind of like a bank shot from other witnesses, so it would be good to hear from him. And, I'm not quite sure where the negotiations are at this point.
Considering how much evidence continues to emerge during the course of all these hearings, can we expect your committee to announce any additional hearings?
Well, you're right. More evidence is pouring out every day. More witnesses are coming forward. It's almost like a national catharsis as people who have information are deciding to turn it over to the January 6th Select Committee. So, I had hoped that we would be done with the hearing process by the end of June. It may be that the incorporation of all the new evidence coming in requires us to go a little bit further into the summer.
Congressman Adam Schiff, a fellow member of your committee, tells CNN he believes this plot, and I'm quoting him now, likely violated multiple federal laws and should be investigated by the U.S. Justice Department. Do you agree? And I ask the question of you because you used to teach constitutional law at the American University Law School here in Washington.
And I did teach criminal law, too. Look, there are more than 850 criminal prosecutions that have been brought already as part of these events. These are things like assaulting federal officers and seditious conspiracy, which means conspiracy to overthrow or put down the government or interfere with the execution of the laws. So I think that the way most classic mob investigations and prosecutions proceed is they work their way to the top, and I think that's what's happening. And, we've already committed that we thought federal offenses were committed by Donald Trump and by John Eastman, and Judge Carter picked up on that in the Eastman litigation, where he said he also thought it was likely federal offenses were committed there, specifically conspiracy to interfere with a federal proceeding and conspiracy to defraud the United States of America.
Yeah, I'll take that answer as a yes. Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, a former Republican congressman who has advised the January 6th committee will join us and weigh in on the testimony about GOP officials being pressured by Trump and actually threatened. Stay with us. You're in the Situation Room.
Africa Avant-Garde in association with Access Bank. More than banking.
We need to start developing more writers. As a producer, I'm always on the lookout for new voices, new writers, because those are the foundations of good storytelling.
The best advice I've ever received is to never stop writing, because once you start practicing the thing that you want to get good at, you start having all those inflicting thoughts of, am I good enough?
To find your voice as a filmmaker or to tell stories that have deep impact, they have to be stories that affect you yourself. If it doesn't affect you, you can't translate that into a story. Whatever you write will be superficial. So first, if you're going to tell a story that is honest, it has to be honest to you first.
Sunday on CNN. In a year full of challenges, let's salute those going the extra mile, using their platforms for good. CNN Heroes Salutes, hosted by Aaron Burnett, Sunday.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Over that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessment. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces. I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on. No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered. There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
I'm Sam Kiley in Ukraine, and this is CNN.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
Out front tonight, a potential breakthrough in treating coronavirus.
We've got very little help from the federal government.
Could all this spending lead to a bigger economic crisis? One of our viewers saw you last night on the show. She says she's going to pay your rent this month. Shut up. I want to go now to an incredible story of survival. Would you do it all again in terms of being a nurse, knowing that that could put you at risk for this?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Aaron Burnett out front, tonight on CNN. This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
At today's January 6th hearing, we heard witnesses publicly recount the very dangerous threats they've received. Listen to Republican officials and an election worker describe what they went through as Trump tried to undo Joe Biden's legitimate wins in Arizona and Georgia.
Some people broke into my daughter-in-law's home, and my son has passed, and she's a widow and has 2 kids, and so we're very concerned about her safety also.
They have had video panel trucks with videos of me proclaiming me to be a pedophile and a pervert and a corrupt and politician. We had a daughter who was gravely ill, who was upset by what was happening outside.
I received a call from my grandmother saying that there were people at her home, and they, they knocked on the door, and of course she opened it and seeing who was there, who it was, and they just started pushing their way through, claiming that they were coming in to make a citizen's arrest. They needed to find me and my mom. They knew we were there. And she was just screaming and didn't know what to do. I don't go to the grocery store at all. I haven't been anywhere at all. I've gained about 60 pounds. I just don't do nothing anymore. I don't want to go anywhere. I second guess everything that I do. It's affecting my life in a major way, in every way, all because of lies.
Joining us now, along with our panel, former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman, who previously served as an advisor to the January 6th Select Committee. Congressman, thanks for joining us. You advise this committee. You're also an expert on online extremism. What's your reaction to hearing the danger these wonderful election officials and their families were in?
It should horrify everyone. And, you know, when I watched them, it sort of reminded me, sadly, of what our family went through for a couple years and the things that we still get today. But what Mr. Bowers went through with his daughter, what Shay went through with her mother, and what they had to sort of withstand is really heart-wrenching. And, you know, doing this for so long now, because I was doing this well before the committee when I was in counterterrorism in the past, it seems to me, and I want to say this, is that technology and money allow small minds to push big lies. And the issue that you have here is that this message that's circulated digitally actually manifested itself in the physical realm, you know, when people come out and start to attack individuals, or they send them bad things, or they show up at houses and things of that nature. And I think that's what really should concern people as they look at this, is how violent this can get. And we've already seen on January 6th. We just have this idea, you know, when you're talking about those that have been radicalized through complete fantasy, where they believe that this is a battle between good and evil. They do things that, you know, I don't know if they regret it or not, but they do things that really hurt the public, but it hurts the individuals that are trying to serve this country, Wolf. And, you know, it's just very touching to watch it, but it also shows the power of social media and online radicalization.
And it's very, very dangerous indeed. Congressman Adam Schiff today said, and I'm quoting him now, "The system held, but barely." That's his quote. Is the committee making the case that just a few key figures stood between Trump and a coup?
Well, you know, he talked about pushing out Team Normal and bringing in Team Crazy. Thank God it was the C team and not the B team. I think that's the issue that you have here, is that, you know, I wonder if they didn't go out forward and have those ridiculous lawsuits, if they would have run a little deeper and darker, what would have happened? And that's the thing that scares me, and that's why, you know, Adam is saying the things that he's saying, is that, you know, the issue that we have is that multiple layers were involved from top to bottom. And I think as the committee goes forward, when you look at the second, third, and fourth layers, but, you know, beneath that top tier, you know, when you see those cascading effects or those individuals that are pushing this, whether through fundraising and things of that nature, it should scare the hell out of people.
Certainly should. You know, Jamie, the committee laid out, and it was very, very clear, they laid out all this emotional testimony today, but they also made it clear they want to hear from some other witnesses, including the former White House counsel, Pat Cipollone. What's your analysis? I know you're doing some reporting on this.
So Liz Cheney doesn't say anything by accident, and she really called out Pat Cipollone. My sources have told me that Pat Cipollone behind the scenes was cooperating, and then a couple of weeks ago, it seems, all of a sudden he decided he did not want to appear. I would suggest that we remember a couple of names. Bill Barr showed up. Eric Hirschman, who worked in the White House counsels, showed up. And John Dean showed up during Watergate. They are White House counsel. It is to the office of the president. They are not a personal attorney. I don't know why Pat Cipollone is all of a sudden trying to exit stage right, but it's, I know that he has critical first-hand evidence that the committee needs.
The committee really wants to hear from him. We'll see if that happens. You know, Caitlin, there's also the prospect of new video, previously unreleased video, from another British filmmaker who was covering the final weeks of Trump's 2020 presidential campaign. Did this catch people in Trump's circle off guard?
Yeah, and it kind of speaks to how chaotic it was in those final few weeks leading up to the election, that period after the election, and then what happened before January 6th. And so a lot of people say that they learned today about this video and about the extensive access that this British filmmaker got, that he says he's now been subpoenaed and he's turned over and shared these hours worth of footage with the committee. That raises questions, of course, about what these officials were saying, because he claims that he interviewed Trump several times, several members of his family, top staffers inside the West Wing. I believe the Vice President Mike Pence was also interviewed. So it raises questions about what they said. Now, we don't know what exactly this footage includes. People will be able to compare it to what they said then when they were not testifying, to what they said to the committee when they were testifying. That'll be a big question. But I think a lot of people have said they weren't aware of this happening. I'm a little skeptical of that, the idea that a camera crew could come into the Trump campaign headquarters or into the West Wing and no one questions what's going on. But that has been what we've heard today from people, saying that they were very surprised that this person had this extensive of access. And if he has access on January 6th, obviously that is going to be something that the committee really wants to see.
And we'd like to see that video too, obviously. All of us would be very, very interested. Casey, does it sound like the committee is going to need to extend its schedule, have more hearings to deal with all these new developments?
I think they're leaving potentially open that possibility, but I also think that they are very acutely aware, and in my conversations with people that have been working on it, they know that this is the window, right? Like, this is when they have America's attention. They need to do as much as they possibly can in this space of time. That doesn't rule out any future action necessarily. I do think, they're up against a really hard deadline, and that's November of this year, when it's really likely that Democrats will lose the House and ultimately this committee won't exist anymore.
You're a legal analyst, Laura. The committee still hasn't made any decisions that we know of about whether to make formal criminal referrals to the U.S. Justice Department, for example. How big of an issue is this, and is there a serious disagreement among committee members?
Well, we learned last week that there was this notion of, on the one hand, Benny Thompson saying they were not going to, and Liz Cheney quickly coming back and saying, leave everything open for that very reason. But you see, again, the Attorney General Merrick Garland said, we are watching very closely, and my January 6th prosecutors are watching very closely. They already have more than 800 prosecutions going right now, as Congressman Jamie Raskin talked about. But you also have the idea of what is the information they're waiting to hear from the committee, and vice versa. It's very, very plausible that the Attorney General and the prosecutors, whose job it is to actually, lead the prosecutions, don't have the desire to hand over everything in a public fashion right now. There could be cooperators, there could be people who want to be helpful on the criminal side, or don't want to come forward in a public event right now and risk their Fifth Amendment concerns. So I'm waiting to see what they actually have.
Yeah, I'm curious. All of us are curious, want to see what they have as well. Denver Riggleman, let me give you the last word on this. What do you think is going to happen as far as criminal referrals are concerned?
First of all, I want to tell everybody on the panel, I sort of know some of the stuff that they have, so it's a lot. And I think, I would just say, and I think the biggest referral is when they transfer the data. For me, I think the DOJ is paying attention to this. I know some of it. I know the data that they can actually sort of link to publications, interviews, metadata, emails, right, things of that nature. I think once they transfer that over, I think that's the most powerful statement to the DOJ that they're ready to rock and roll. And, for me, watching today, I think this was the most powerful hearing for me so far based on the individuals. But again, I sort of agree with the panel here completely. Well, I agree with them completely that the most powerful thing is the data that they transfer over for the DOJ, and they're making a hell of a case to say that this is a top-down sort of bizarrely structured coup-like movement that's going on with so many people.
Yeah, we'll see what the Attorney General of the United States decides to do with all that information. Thank you very, very much to the entire panel. Coming up, new details emerging right now about former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and how he wanted to send Trump hats, Trump coins, and more to election auditors in Georgia.
We're here now at the home of one of the FSB team, and my name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
It's just been a chaotic scene here. People are so exhausted. Just gonna help her carry this bag. We were just in the hospital. It was shocking. Why do you think India has been hit so badly? Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy.
Why does a small group of women asking for their right to be educated threaten you so much?
Raise your hand if you love school.
I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you.
You can hear gunshots every couple minutes. Now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their story.
Being a Restovac robs these children of their soul. They never feel like they're valued. I remember one of the girls said to me, "It's as if I'm living, but I don't exist." My name is Joan Kahn, and I am the Executive Director for Restovac Freedom Foundation based in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Restovac Freedom Foundation works with children who are living as Restovac. It's a form of child slavery. Many of them work from sunup to sundown. They do most of the chores for the family. When CNN came to Haiti for the Freedom Project with Common Dreams, we found this child in an area that we work. Her name is Fedna, and she lived with her grandfather at the time. And we went to visit the grandfather and asked if he would allow her to go to school. And he agreed to do that. And so we actually took her and enrolled her in school for the first time. She was 9 years old. Now Fedna is 20, and so she's in the 10th grade. They get a really late start on life, but at least they are able to be part of society. And I think just seeing these children become visible to people is a powerful thing.
On Mission Ahead, a new spin on launching spacecraft into orbit.
As a species, I think we just always look up and we say, well, that's the next frontier.
Then, could this new zero-emission boat be the Tesla of the sea? Plus, preparing for the future, are cities that float the answer?
On water, buildings don't have to be static.
Meet the entrepreneurs and inventors who are taking mobility to the next level.
Mission Ahead, Saturday on CNN, in association with Fujifilm.
New information tonight about former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows revealed in today's January 6th hearing about how he wanted to entice election auditors in Georgia during the 2020 recount there. CNN's Brian Todd is up on Capitol Hill with the latest. Brian, we now know Meadows was privately admitting Trump lost even as he pushed the former president's election lies.
Right, Wolf. Part of a pattern that observers say Mark Meadows was known for, often telling people of power and influence what they wanted to hear in order to advance his own personal ambitions. In late November 2020, as then-President Trump and his acolytes were feverishly pushing false claims of election fraud,
this election was rigged.
One of the most rabid Trump enablers was his right-hand man in the Oval Office. Then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows sent an impassioned text to Ginny Thomas, the right-wing activist and wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Meadows said of the battle to keep Trump in office, quote, "This is a fight of good versus evil. Evil always looks like the victor until the King of Kings triumphs. Do not grow weary in well-doing. The fight continues. I have staked my career on it."
It's more likely to me that Mark Meadows was playing to Virginia Thomas, a true believer, saying things in a way in his text that he probably thought she wanted to hear.
That message to Ginny Thomas was one of thousands of texts that Meadows turned over to the House January 6th committee before he stopped cooperating with the committee last December. According to reporting by CNN and The New Yorker, during the tumultuous period after the 2020 election and before the January 6th attack on the Capitol, Mark Meadows was burning both sides of a dangerous candle.
At the same time, he's telling people, such as Bill Barr and others, we don't believe in this stuff. he is facilitating and putting in front of the president in the Oval Office the most anyone who comes to the door with some lunatic election fraud conspiracy theory.
Meadows also personally went to the state of Georgia after the election as part of the Trump team's efforts to flip the election results. And according to the January 6th committee citing a White House aide, Meadows even wanted to send swag to Georgia auditors.
In the words of one White House aide, a shitload of POTUS stuff, including coins, actual autographed MAGA hats, etc. White House staff intervened to make sure that didn't happen.
Quite a journey from Meadows' time as a Tea Party conservative in the House, a seat he won in 2012.
Was not so much thought of as a policy genius or someone who had a prospective agenda, but someone who was there to derail the agenda of Democrats, to throw bombs.
What led Meadows from that to his position at Trump's side during such a treacherous time? One analyst says pure ambition.
What mattered for him is he wanted to exercise power. And once he got in the White House and got that top position, he wanted to consolidate power around him.
And now, ironically, Mark Meadows, the man who helped push those false election fraud theories for Trump, is now himself the subject of a probe by the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation for allegedly registering to vote at a home in that state where he never resided. A spokesperson for Meadows declined to comment for our story. Wolf?
Brian Todd up on Capitol Hill. Thank you very much. Coming up, the Texas Public Safety Director now says there were enough police to stop the Uvalde school shooter 3 minutes after he actually entered the school building. Now he's calling the response, and I'm quoting now, an abject failure.
I'm Linda Kincaid in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
Afghan women are afraid that this is the beginning of your efforts to erase them from the workspace.
It's not clear. Even if we appear with the burqa, maybe they will say that women's voices are forbidden.
Did you ever imagine that you would be prevented from going to school?
Girls' education is fundamental to the dignity of Afghan life.
Do you believe that young girls will be allowed to go to school here in Afghanistan?
My name's Jim Brailsford, and I lead the Industry and Solutions Marketing team for Kinaxis. It's absolutely key that businesses incorporate sustainability into their business models. Firstly, you have got the corporate objective and being a good global citizen. You've also got the need to be reflecting that to your public, to your consumers, that show that you are actually being environmentally conscious. And also, as supply chains are more mature and are considering all of these things in a holistic way, it develops a sort of a steadiness to their operation. Supply chain sustainability will become a qualifier. It will not necessarily be the winner, but it will become a qualifier enabling you to participate in the competition.
Cesare Dutray, a manufacturer of gold dentures in England, traveled to India, then part of the British Empire, in 1930 to sell his wares to officers in the British Army. Many of the officers he met complained about their wristwatches getting smashed during polo matches. Back in Europe, Dutray hooked up with two watchmakers, Lecoutre and Edmond Jaeger, and an engineer named Alfred Chavot, and the four of them devised the Reverso. Now, the unique feature of the Reverso is that the case slides and flips over, so the glass part of the watch, the crystal, is not exposed. What is exposed is a solid metal back, which can withstand any bumps and smashes during a polo match or any other sport.
Tonight we're learning deeply disturbing new details about what went wrong in the police response to the Uvalde school shooting. CNN crime and justice correspondent Shimon Prokupecz has the latest from Austin.
The law enforcement response to the attack at Robb Elementary was an abject failure.
Tonight, new information detailing a law enforcement response gone horribly wrong. The head of the Texas Department of Public Safety showing a damning and detailed minute-by-minute timeline chronicling the deadly attack that killed 19 children and 2 adults, and laying the blame on Pete Arredondo, the school district's police chief, for the failed response.
3 minutes after the subject entered the West Building, there was a sufficient number of armed officers wearing body armor to isolate, distract, and neutralize the subject.
Colonel Steve McGraw telling Texas lawmakers that 11 officers responded to the shooting and were inside the school by 11:36, within 3 minutes of the gunman entering the school, including School District Police Chief Pete Arredondo. Yet, according to McGraw, they didn't do anything for over an hour at the guidance of Arredondo.
The only thing stopping a hallway of dedicated officers from entering room 111 and 112 was the on-scene commander, who decided to place the lives of officers before the lives of children.
Initially, authorities said the gunman entered 2 adjacent classrooms and barricaded himself behind locked doors. However, McCraw says video from the scene indicates not one of the initial responding officers tried to open either of those doors until moments before they took the gunman down. And it had been unlocked the entire time.
There's no way to lock the door from the inside, and there's no way for the subject to lock the door from the inside.
McCraw revealed the strike plate on the door had been malfunctioning and wouldn't hold the lock. A new image from surveillance footage obtained by the Austin American Statement shows the halls of Robb Elementary at 11:52. At least 3 officers were in the hallway, 2 with rifles and 1 who appears to have a tactical shield, just 19 minutes after the gunman entered the school.
The doctrine for active shooters is clear. You stop the killing, you stop the dying.
Despite this, they waited in the hallway outside the classrooms and didn't attempt to enter until 12:50 p.m. at the direction of Arredondo, according to McGraw. Arredondo is facing harsh criticism for his alleged lack of action.
We were failed by Pete Arredondo. He failed our kids, teachers, parents, and city.
Standing back a whole hour, leaving them inside with that gunman. It's not right. It's cowardly stuff.
And Wolf, we reached out to Chief Arredondo's attorney. We've not heard back from the attorney. Interestingly enough, Wolf, Arredondo was actually in this building today here at the Capitol in Austin. He was testifying at a different committee, at a House committee, which has been running its own investigation. But the difference there is that that testimony, it was behind closed doors. They've been running their own investigation, taking all the testimony behind closed doors. And of course, you know, families, a lot of the families in Uvalde, the parents of students who went to that school, they say they want Arredondo fired. Wolf?
CNN Shimon Prokupecz on the scene for us. Thank you very much. Coming up, a key breakthrough right now on the bipartisan gun deal. We have details when we come back.
what in the world is going on in Texas right now?
A ruby red state gets redder.
Money is what's pushing Texas to the far right.
Why?
Is this about being conservative or is it about control?
CNN investigates deep in the pockets of Texas. Saturday on CNN.